What is up, everybody? Autotech Aaron here. Welcome back to another Nasty Love build video. So in the last video, as you guys saw, we went ahead and installed the transmission, got the clutch in and bled, and now it's time to actually final mount the transmission. I went to the steel yard and got some steel pieces so that we can make our cross member and get this thing mounted up. So as you see here, we have some 3/16 plate steel, and I believe this is 1 3/4 inch tubing. We're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna cut out 2 rectangles and weld them on each part of the frame, and then cut out 2 squares that are half of the size of the rectangles. And then we are going to weld those to this pipe, drill some holes all the way through the squares and through the rectangles so that we can remove this cross member for easier removal of the transmission. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure some stuff out, draw some templates on this plate steel, and then we will get it cut out with the plasma cutter. So here is our template right here. We have a 4x4 square, another 4x4 square, a 2x4 rectangle, and another one. We're gonna have 2 bolt holes here, 2 here, 2 here, and 2 there. And these 2 pieces are going to be welded opposing each other on the frame. And then these 2 pieces will bolt to these 2 pieces. Sorry if that's confusing. And then we will have a piece of pipe welded between that piece and that piece there. You guys will see it happen. That makes it so that this cross member is removable in case we need to pull the trans back out, because I do not want to have to cut the cross member if I ever have to remove the transmission again. So without further ado, let's get to cutting. Well, I certainly didn't think that one through. We might have accidentally burned my floor a little bit. Not super worried about it, but yeah, that did happen. All right, so let's go for the next cut here. So I don't know why I was trying to push it. I'm gonna go ahead and try to drag instead of push. I think that's probably my issue and why I'm not getting the greatest of cuts. All right, so for being my first time ever using that plasma cutter, it didn't go horribly. I do have a nick there and one there, but that's really not an issue. That's just cosmetic at this point. Although we did manage to burn our floor, which isn't super great. But I'm not super concerned about it. It is a garage, it's a shop. So let's go ahead and get this stuff cleaned up. I'll clean off the frame on the truck and we'll get all this stuff tacked up and ready to go on. All right, so I got these all cleaned up. The edges are looking a lot better. I'm gonna go ahead and drill all the holes in these now, and I'm not gonna record that just to save a little bit of time, but I'll see you guys after that's done. So I have both side brackets made here. I have the holes drilled and I have them bolted together. There is a little bit of overlap. I might just use a grinder to get rid of that. But other than that, we are basically ready at this point to clean up the frame and get these tacked on, measure for our pipe, get that in and tacked. And then we'll be able to final weld everything and then make the little ear that holds the actual mount itself. And this trans cross member will be done. So without further ado, let's get the frame cleaned up and get these bad boys tacked on. That is right about where our bracket's gonna sit. So I gotta clean off a little more right there, and then we will be good to tack this on. All right, now let's measure this up and get it tacked on in the same exact spot on the other side. We now have both side brackets tacked on, and now we're gonna cut our pipe to fit between these 2 brackets. They are at a bit of an angle, so I'm gonna have to cut the ends of the pipe at a bit of an angle, but that's not a huge deal. So let's go ahead and get that measured up, get it cut out, and then also tacked in, and we can bring this all down and final weld it. So this here is our pipe that's gonna go all the way across. Our widest point was 29.5 inches, so I measured exactly half of that, which is right here. And then I measured the shorter side, which was 28 1/4, And the difference between those two was 3/8 of an inch. So I measured 29.5 all the way out, and then I went back 3/8 of an inch on one side of the pipe. So we have this angled cut here so that this pipe should fit in there perfectly. So I'm gonna get out my grinder, put on my cutting wheel, and go ahead and get this cut. So we have got our crossbar here to fit perfectly in between the rails. Now we just gotta go ahead and get this tacked in, and we can pull it out and final weld everything. All right, so I'm just gonna put a couple more tacks up here, and we'll pull this down and get it final welded. So as you guys can tell, I'm not the greatest welder ever, but I can take two pieces of metal and make them one, and I think that's what really counts, honestly. So let's flip this over and weld the other side. And I did forget to explain myself here, but after welding up the pipe, we went ahead and final welded on the plates. Seems like we might be running out of welding gas. These welds are kind of weak. If you guys see, these welds have some pinholes in them. I'm probably gonna have to grind those out and redo some of these because those aren't very strong. I don't think this plate is going anywhere because we were able to get a good solid weld along this top row here. I'll go ahead and throw bead on the other side and see what it does. It seems like when I weld horizontally, it's not having any issues for whatever reason. So I'm gonna throw some tacks on this other side, and we'll probably call that good. I'll have to grind those out and re-weld. Okay, so I actually forgot to explain this next part here too. I went ahead and finished welding on both sides of the plates, but I still had to make the bracket that actually held the mount to the transmission, so that was what I went ahead and made right here. Alright, so we went ahead and cut out this 2.5 by 3 inch piece, and we're just gonna mount it there and weld it to our cross member, and it should just be able to go straight out just like that and be just fine. So let's go ahead and mark where we need to drill our holes and then get those drilled. We have our plate made, the holes are drilled. Now I'm gonna bolt this to the bottom of the trans and we'll get it tacked to our cross member. So this is tacked in. I'm gonna pull it off. I might put a gusset in and I might not. I mean, it is 3/16 inch plate steel, so I don't think it's gonna flex or bend too much. But without further ado, let's get this off. And there you have it. There's our bracket final welded on. Now my welds definitely aren't the greatest, but I don't claim to be a welder. I even decided to weld in this little gusset here just to give some added strength. So let's go ahead, test fit this one more time, and then we'll pull it back off and get it painted. And yet again, I forgot to explain myself. I did not actually pull the cross member back out to paint it. I just left it in and just called it a night. Alright, it has actually been like a day or two since our last video. We have the transmission in and we have our drive line length measured, but we do have a bit of an issue. I'm sure you guys won't be able to see, but underneath of the truck, I was noticing a leak right up in front in that area. And our hydraulic throwout bearing is actually leaking, so I do have to pull the transmission back out and either replace or reseal that one. Speedway Motors, the people who sold me the trans kit for this truck, are being a bit of a pain in the butt, and eventually they ended up sending me the kit to reseal that throwout bearing, and I'm going to pull it out and try to reseal it and hope that it doesn't leak again. I'll make sure to inspect it and make sure that there's not an issue with any, like the bore or anything like that, so it's not just gonna leak again when we go to put it back in. But I'll probably be working on that later. I might not even do it in this video. For right now, we do need to get everything relocated for the battery because the battery cannot sit right here anymore. We have the alternator is going to be right here. I probably should have got a different alternator set up, one that was on the driver's side, but I didn't really think that through super well. So it's going to be fairly simple. We just have to take this cable and feed it back through the firewall because that is going to now be going to the bed of the truck where the battery is going to be relocated to. I also have to extend just 2 wires from the engine bay, which are these 2 here. These also need to go all the way to the back of the truck. So as a first step, we will come back here to the back of the truck, and I plan on having the battery sit right here. I'm going to buy a weld-in mount. I don't know if it's against any regulations to have it next to the fuel cell. I'm sure it probably is, but that's where I'm going to have to put it. I don't really have enough cable to run it all the way to the back, but we already have a hole drilled here that somebody drilled for some speaker wires, because for whatever reason, this truck had speakers in the back, and it actually looked like somebody was living in the back of this thing before I got it, because it also had a dirty mattress back here. But with that being said, let's go ahead and grab our 1.5" hole saw, drill all the way through this part of the bed, and then drill through the cab so that we can run our wires. Also in this video, we are going to be working on getting our ECM put on the shelf here and getting all the wiring tucked up out of the way and hidden, and getting everything else in the cabin cleaned up. Anyways, let's get to drilling that hole. So I was planning on mounting the ECM down here, but I was thinking it would be pretty slick to have it hidden here in the glove box. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this glove box out, cut out the back of it so that we can get the wires coming through to the ECM, and then get the ECM mounted to the actual glove box, and then we'll route all of our wires and get everything prettied up. It's just a couple of Phillips head screws, and then this glove box will come right out. All right, as you guys see here, our ECM does fit perfectly in this, and we just have to turn it around here and cut out the back right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera and get this thing mounted in the box, and then we'll go ahead and throw it back in the truck. So there we have it. Our ECM is now in the glove box. The back half is cut off so that our wiring can go through, and it's pretty solid in there. Now let's go ahead and put this back in and start making our wiring connections and get everything in here tidied up so it's not a mess. Okay, there we have it. All right, so real quickly, I did drill a hole all the way back here, and I put a grommet right there. That is gonna be our main ECM power, so I'm gonna go ahead and run that cable through. That will go all the way back to the battery in the bed of the truck. And there you have it. The glove box now houses the ECM. I'm actually pretty happy with how this all looks. Now, it is a bit of a mess under here, but I mean, when you're sitting in the truck, you literally won't see that. And I'm not super worried about the way that it looks as long as it's functioning. So now I'm going to work on getting this stuff in a loom. Then we'll get a clamp or something to hold all of this to the side of the truck right there so it's out of the way for the passenger. All right, so I have some wires here that I do need to extend, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these soldered up and get them heat shrinked. Now with those wires extended, we can go ahead and tuck them in the loom. So we have most of our wires ran through the back of the truck right there. Now it is time to work on our positive and negative battery cables. Okay, so we have our battery cable laid out here. I might have actually not even gotten enough cable, but we need to go through the floor right about in this area. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill a hole, and we'll put a grommet in it and put our wire through and see if it'll be long enough. All right, there we go. Put our cable through just like that. And we'll go under the truck and see if this will work. All right, so I did do a ton of work with the camera off. I went ahead and got all of my cables ran and wire tied to the floor using these cool little cable tie sticky things, which you put a zip tie through it, wrap it around your wire, peel off the backing, and then stick it to the floor or whatever you're putting it to. and we were able to get the cables pretty well tied out of the way. I do have a couple little things that I still have to do, such as put the cable ends on the cables and get a battery box and get it welded into the bed pan here. And up front, we do still have to put on a negative battery terminal and then get our starter terminal on. As you guys saw, we did have a leak from the hydraulic throwout bearing. I'm gonna go ahead and do that in the next video, as well as the cable ends and finishing up the wiring. It's just a couple little things that I have to do. But with that being said, that is everything that I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And guys, let's get to building nasty love.